All right. I wanted just to give you a moment's advertisement about what we do here at College Depot. Some of you know us very, very well. Some of you are brand new to our process here, and this is your first session with us. We are a free college planning resource center as part of the Phoenix Public Library System, located down here at Burton Bar Central Library at Central and McDowell. We are available to you 6 days a week, 2 days in person and 4 days virtually, to assist you with college applications, creating a college plan, whether that be selecting a major or actually the colleges you're interested in, scholarship searching, and most importantly, I think the majority of our work is in financial aid, FAFSA applications, and the CSS financial aid profile. So that is what we do here at the library. All of our services are free of charge, and we invite you to use us for any aspect of your college planning. Next, please. I want to tell you why you're doing this exercise today. Why do you have to do the CSS financial aid profile? Approximately 400 colleges and universities, mostly the ones that participate in the common application, also use the CSS financial aid profile to give them a bigger and better picture of your family's income situation and ability to pay for college. These schools that use the CSS profile have a lot of money in private endowment and institutional funds that they are anxious to give away to needy students. But they believe the FAFSA only goes so far in identifying needy students. So the CSS profile is what I fondly call the FAFSA on steroids. It's a more comprehensive snapshot of your family's true ability to pay for college. That means that it basically is going to ask you quite a few more questions than you got asked on the FAFSA if you've already completed it. So that is why we do this as a separate exercise from FAFSA completion. If you have not completed your FAFSA yet, there is no particular order in which you must do these applications. But if the CSS profile is required by your school, so is the FAFSA. The FAFSA is almost always required by schools if you are eligible to apply for it. So be sure that you don't forget that important document and you complete that also. The CSS financial aid profile goes one step further than the FAFSA, though, in providing a basis for schools to award you their very valuable institutional aid. Because if, let's say, Stanford is going to give you a full ride scholarship, they want to make sure that you are not Bill Gates' daughter or son. I usually use him as an example because I know he doesn't need any financial aid. Going on, please. So we're going to get started right now. Hopefully you are with me and you are going to treat this as a lab experience. So I hope that you have all paid attention to my worksheet that we sent out to you upon registration, and you should have already created your College Board account. If you have not created it, you're going to need to take a step back and do that. You probably will be a little behind us or a lot behind us today. So if you have not yet created your College Board account, you'll want to step back, do that, and then listen to this recording at a later date. At that point, then, once you've listened to the recording or you've done the work you can on the College Board profile, you will be able to actually schedule an individual time if you have more questions or you need more help. You are going to log into the cssprofile.collegeboard.org with your account credentials. I have already logged into my account because I created a fake one to do this along with all of you. Once you have logged in, you are going to be completing the fall 2022, spring 2023 CSS profile. Make sure you are on the right one. And under the Getting Started navigation that you will see on the left side of your CSS profile login, you will see that you have some basic questions to answer. about your demographics. So go ahead and review those right now, and we will go on to the next section in just a moment. So if you have any questions about what you need to be doing at this point, please ask now. But you should be at the Getting Started section of your 22-23 CSS profile. As you get started with your profile, you will be also asked to answer some basic dependency questions. They come up very, very early in the CSS profile, and they're called student status. This is where you define for yourself whether you are dependent on your parents or independent of your parents. And for 99.9% of high school applicants, and I'm assuming many of you or most of you are on this call, you will be answering all of these questions with a no, just as you did on your FAFSA. So you are expected to enter information about your parents. But please look at the student status questions and answer them accordingly. This application also has a very interesting flow to it. Right in the middle of your demographic information, you were asked to identify your dependency status. But once you have done that, you then will come to the very next screen, which has your housing information. This is basically demographic. Where do you live? What's your address? So I'm going to let all of you look at this also and complete any part of it that you need to. This does not pre-fill as much information as the FAFSA does, so there will be places on the form where you will need to enter additional information. So I will let everyone take just about 30 seconds to get through that. Anytime you see an asterisk, you must list that information. It's required to move forward, but many sections you will be able to jump around, and it will save what you have already done. All right. After you enter your housing information, you will get a screen that asks you to confirm your demographics. This is simply what you have already put in. You do not need to put in a student financial aid ID from College Board because it probably is in the process of creating that for you. Don't worry about that field. Look at all others, however, and make sure that the information is accurate and complete. If it is, check the box at the bottom of the box. The box at the bottom of the box. You all with me right now? I'm going to give you the definition that you've all heard ad nauseum about who are your parents. The College Board considers your parents to be somewhat different than the FAFSA does. So you are going to come up on a screen after you confirm your demographics that will have parent information. And you will see down on the navigation screen, that is where I am right now. The first screen you will see defines parental relationships. So this is no more intuitive than the FAFSA is. In fact, it asks for more information. So who are you supposed to list here? You can list up to 4 parents under parental relationships. That includes your biological or adoptive parents, whether they are married or living together. Okay. So those are obvious. If they're your biological or adoptive parents, you include both of them and you're probably done. But what about if you have 2 biological parents who are now separated or divorced, or adoptive parents who are separated or divorced? In that case, you must list the non-custodial parent as well. You didn't have to do that on the FAFSA. You have to do it now. And in a moment, it will ask you what that status of all of these parents is. So, biological or adoptive parent or parents, biological or adoptive parent, and step parent if your biological or adoptive parent has remarried. But you have to do that same exercise for your non-custodial parent. If you don't know who they are or where they are, and you've been with your mom or dad by themselves all of your life, don't list people you don't know. But if your mom and dad are divorced, your dad lives in Tucson and he has remarried and your mom has remarried and she lives here, you need to list all 4 of those people. Additionally, if you have knowledge of your biological or adoptive parents and you have a legal guardian or guardians, you must list them as well. So this is where the form begins to look different than the FAFSA. So I'm going to let you all process this screen and the parental relationships and ask any questions you may have at this point. Again, you may add up to 4 parents here, including the ones you live with and the ones you don't, or the ones who are your legal guardians and not really your parents.
Hi, ma'am. I have a question.
Yes.
My daughter has no contact with her other parent, so we're checking that box, and then it says there's going to be additional information required at the end of this form.
Do you know where her father is?
No, we don't have an address for him.
Okay. I would probably I would not list him at this point. The school may ask for a form, or any of the schools may ask for a form that will say we have no contact with him, but I would just leave him out right now.
Yeah, that's going to be the most direct path for our situation.
I think so, yes. You could list him, but then it's going to say, why can't you provide information about him? You might as well not provide the information. If the school has questions, you can then tell them. This is a largely school-driven form, everyone. So unlike the FAFSA, which goes to a central processor and comes back and it looks the same for everybody, some schools will want more information, some will not. All right, I think in the interest of time, I'm going to move forward. Do not panic, anyone, if you are behind at all and you need to catch up. You will have ample opportunity to do so, as we will send you the recording, and I will be happy to work with you on any finishing touches, no matter how large they are. Let's talk about academic information for a moment. That is below the residence information. I'm clicking on it right now in my own. Academic information is going to ask you about what you're doing right now as a student. Many of you or all of you are in high school. And then it is going to give you the opportunity to search for the colleges that you want to receive the CSS profile information. Many of you have a lot of colleges, and you will need to list a certain amount here. If you've got 12 or 20, more than the allotted amount here, please talk to me afterwards and we will discuss how you go about reporting the extras. For right now, however, in the interest of time, I would like you to search for at least one school, no more, just one of your choices. Now, not all schools require the CSS profile, so I'm hopeful that you know which ones do, but you can search for your colleges by name, and they will have multiple listings. For instance, some colleges have a graduate school of business, a graduate school of law, an undergraduate college. You always want to choose the undergraduate option, because you are not in one of the specialized professional schools. In your current academic year, for those of you who are in high school getting ready to graduate in May, you are in 12th grade, obviously, and you must search for your high school. What if your high school is private? You are not going to a Phoenix Union or another public school, but you are attending a private high school like Brophy or Xavier. If you attend a private high school, did you receive a scholarship to attend there? If you don't know how much it was, you can leave that blank for now and go back to it. If you attended a private high school, did your parents pay some for it or all of it? And if so, how much? Only for this year.
If the answer is,
oh, go ahead.
If the answer is 0 funds spent on private school, do you put something in that box or do you just leave it blank?
I would suggest putting a 0. Anytime you could fill out anything, then they know that you have not accidentally forgotten to answer it, but it is intentional if you put a 0. Good question.
Thank you.
And for college choices by name, search for those, pick one right now. I know you may have lots. Some of you have tons of them because I've been working with you right now. But if you just choose one, you'll get some practice at picking it. And then you can always go back to that section. The beauty of this profile is that on the left-hand screen, you can navigate almost anywhere. And that's why I ask you to get started first, so we can work on the not easy stuff. You all know your address. We'll work on the hard stuff when we meet one-on-one if you need us. Okay. So I have selected 2 colleges on my profile. And so those 2 colleges are coming up on the next screen. For most of you, it will be the one college you put in. And you are going to be at any of these schools a first-year undergraduate never previously attended. That is true even if you are taking ACE or other dual enrollment type courses. You will still be considered a first-time freshman at that institution, even if they give you credit for that high school work that you've done. Your housing plans, in almost every case, your housing plan right now is to live on campus. Because you really don't know, and most of these schools for you, in fact, virtually all of them are going to be out of state. So you might as well indicate you plan to live on campus. That way they will calculate aid for you accordingly. If you are applying to the school that you put on so far as early decision or early action, you should indicate that here. If you plan to apply regular decision, please say that also. It is important that you define this because it will affect the deadlines that come into play at the end of this form. At the end of the CSS profile, you will be asked to provide information on that the schools individually request. It could range anything from a copy of your tax return to verification of your household size. But whatever is asked for is going to have a deadline attached to it. So this is where you want to tell them what kind of admissions decision are you going for. Any questions so far?
I have another question.
Yeah.
My daughter's doing Quest Bridge, so she may find out next month if she's matched with one of her schools. Is this considered regular decision, early action, or early decision?
I would just put regular decision on all of them. If she does receive an offer from one of those schools, and good for her for applying, if she does receive an offer, then they will recognize she is early decision.
Okay, and then if we have a box that's empty, again, as in the ID assigned, Do we just leave that blank?
Just leave that. If it's not a number, a logical number, if it's just an ID, you can leave that blank. And again, anything you don't see an asterisk by, don't worry too much about it. It's extra information.
Okay.
Thank you. I love interacting with people, and interacting with this computer screen is pretty ugly for me. So please ask away. All right. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds before we start talking about your parents, or to the parents on the phone or on the session before we start talking about you. I need more coffee. I'm not talking right today.
You're making perfect sense.
I'm sorry?
You're making perfect sense.
Oh, thanks. Not to me, but thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to move on the screen and y'all can catch up because I'm going to stop. But now you get to parent details. You have to answer the questions about your parents. Who did you put in that relationship? A few screens ago, did you put one parent, two parents, three parents, or four parents? You could have put up to 4. And so now the CSS profile is picking up what you put in for parent 1, parent 2, etc. And this is where the worksheet that I sent you can come in handy, because I don't know about any of you, but I have definitely seen students who aren't always aware of how long their parent has worked at a company or what even the company name is. So hopefully this worksheet helped you to define that information for each parent. Provide the following for parent 1 and keep doing that for any other parents you listed. You do not have to include social security number for your parents, but you do need an email address. You do need the state of residence, date of birth, highest level of education if you know it. And then in my parents' case on this form, I have to list what my father is doing for employment. Hopefully, you know, if your parent 1 is employed by others, self-employed, unemployed, retired. If they're a dislocated worker, that simply means they have been laid off from a job and are currently in that status. You will notice that you are asked, where does parent 1 work? And how many years has parent 1 been there? Hopefully you can fill in that information. If you have any doubts or you were unable to complete the workshop sheet I sent to you, you can leave this blank and go backwards if you need to.
Where is the worksheet you sent us? I'm not seeing it.
It was in the email sent to your child.
If Chris, I ask for the workshop, would it be in my email?
Whatever you registered at for this, we sent the worksheet out to that address. Chris, is it possible for you to share a link to it?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I can throw that in the chat.
Cool, thank you.
You may not need it, ma'am, but it's a great thing to have, even if you're not able to complete everything today.
I'd love to have it.
Yeah. There's a really, really ugly box on this screen about parent details. You will notice it's asking about your parents' retirement plans. How many 17-year-olds know parent retirement plans? How many of us as parents can readily identify what kind of retirement plan you have or we have? Now you have to do that here. So hopefully, if you have that information in front of you, in my case, I know that my father works for the state of Arizona, and so he is in an employer-sponsored retirement plan because he is in a state retirement plan sponsored by the entity he works for. If I was contributing to a 401k because I work for a private company, I would also have records somewhere. Sometimes they're hard to find, but you need to find a record of the current value of your retirement plan. Now, this is one place you were never asked for this information on the FAFSA, but you are asked now. Does that mean the college or university is going to require any money come out of your retirement plan to pay tuition? Not necessarily. They just want to know about it. They may consider it, but likely they will not, because they understand that retirement funds are not for your children. They're for you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about retirement plans? Some of you are going to have to do this form, this particular parent information, 4 times if you had 4 people in parent relationships. If you only had 1, then you're done. You will also note that if your parents are separated or divorced, when you come to that parent and the additional parent information on a new screen, you will be asked when your parents were separated or divorced. And then you get asked a very interesting question. How much will this parent, the non-custodial one, contribute financially to your educational costs? How in the world do you know? You probably don't. So I would suggest you put in some reasonable figure that is not $50,000 unless you already have a deal with your non-custodial parent that he or she is going to pay for everything. Otherwise, if you don't have a great relationship or your mom or dad doesn't have a great relationship with their ex, then I just suggest putting in a normal amount of money, like $1,000 or $500. I will tell you, colleges and universities don't like to see zeros in these boxes, but I hate it when you put in larger amounts because frequently they're not real. If you overestimate, it's going to hurt you, but don't underestimate either. And do your parents have some kind of an agreement that the non-custodial parent is going to pay for your college? If they don't, that next question is answered no. You will note too, if you listed an additional parent who is not married to your custodial parent anymore or living with them anymore, you are asked on the CSS profile to provide an email address for that other parent. That other parent will be asked, if you know their whereabouts and have any relationship with them, they will be asked to complete a non-custodial parent CSS profile. One of the ugliest parts of this form. But you do, if you have an email address and you do have contact with that other parent, you need to say so now. Questions about this section? How y'all feeling? Okay, we're moving very fast here. Don't be discouraged. Do as much as you can. Now we're going to talk about income, and then I'm going to stop for probably 3 or 4 minutes. When you have finished entering the demographics and the retirement information and the marital status information about each of your parents listed in the parent relationships section, you will then come to parent income information. This is where the form looks a lot like the FAFSA. So good news there. It looks a lot like the FAFSA, except you cannot get information directly from the IRS here. So you must enter this information manually from the federal tax return. If your parents have filed a federal 1040, you should have that in front of you. If you do not, you will not be able to complete this section. If they did not do a 1040, there will be sections where it simply says, how much did they earn from working? In my case, my father had completed a current tax return. The current one is from 2020. He filed a U.S. tax return, and he filed as head of household. Hopefully, those of you who have done the FAFSA, you know where to pick up filing status. It's on the top of the 1040 form. All right. The next screen is going to ask you, when you look at your parents' tax return, did they file any of these schedules or forms? These are schedules and forms that are not completed by a lot of people. So don't be surprised if you don't see them. However, if one of these was completed, you need to check each box for any schedule or form that was completed in addition to the 1040. Again, if you don't see them, the likelihood is you don't have them. And now we're going to get to the very, very ugly screen that some of you really suffered through on the FAFSA as well. And this is the form when you are talking about the U.S. return in front of you. It is very specific. It is asking you to pick up line items from that form. You want to follow this to the letter. Many of these fields may be a zero. If they are a zero or they are blank on your federal income tax return, enter 0 in each field to indicate that you did look at it and it was not applicable. All of you should have something in one of the first 3 or 4 line items because that's income. As you look at the tax return and the screen that has parent income on it and parent U.S. tax return 1040, are all of you feeling pretty comfortable with that? Do you have questions about it? Chris, if I could have you go back one. Thank you. You all feeling good about that tax return in front of you? I hear laughing. No. We don't feel good about it.
I love that you asked.
Yeah. Are we all feeling good about it? I'm not. I hope you all are. All right. There is yet another screen coming up on parent income and benefits. And some of this screen is pretty easy. First of all, it says, how much did Philip earn for work? He's my father here. How much did he earn for work in 2020? That comes generally from either line 1 of the income tax return, or if your parents filed a joint return. You remember this question on the FAFSA, hopefully, guys. It asks, what did each of your parents earn? So you want to put up how much parent 1 earned here, and then you will also be asked about the additional parents on an additional page. You will also see there are parent contributions in box number 2 on the parent income and benefits details screen. Those you can pick up if you click on each of those 4 things, like where do I find how much they contributed to this? A yellow help box will show up that will tell you exactly where you pick up this information. Again, if you don't get to complete it right now, you know you can go back with the recording and complete it. We will also be sending out the worksheet as well again if you need it. I want you to notice too, in box 3, parent income and benefits is much more extensive than it is on the FAFSA. First of all, if you are earning Social Security benefits that were not reported on the tax return, then you must list those benefits here. Now, that will not be true for most of you because most of us are not getting Social Security yet. But if you're getting disability benefits or any type of partial or total Social Security right now, you are listing that amount here because government benefits do count on the CSS profile. If you are receiving alimony from your ex-spouse, you must list it here, including but not limited to amounts reported on the tax return. So that would be anything that you reported as alimony. Many of us don't have that, even if we have exes. We might have child support, but we don't get alimony. But if we did, we might have gotten it as taxable income. It must be listed. Income from other members of the household or money paid on parents' behalf. I want you to look at this for a moment. If you paid money to your parents for something, like you paid them rent to live there, you do not need to include that. But if there are bills that are in your parents' names and they are paid by others, I'll give you an example. I live with my mom and dad and my brother, and he earns a bunch of money and he supports all of us. But the names on the mortgage, the utility bills, everything are my parents, but he pays them for them. I must list that as a contribution. If, however, we just live with my brother and it's his house and his utilities and everything, we do not need to list it. That's complicated, guys. Questions?
Diana, I would just like to ask why that is.
Why?
Yes.
Really good question. And that's one of our staff. Narda, thank you for that question. They really want a complete and utter picture of pretty much every penny that's going in and out. And so if the bills are in your parents' name, then they say, well, it would be like someone's paying cash for them. So therefore, that's why you have to report it here and you don't report it on the FAFSA. That's my best answer. They just want to know everything about you.
Okay, I've got a question. I have money that is lent to me that I have to repay with interest. Some of it was for bills and rent, and then some of it was for business expenses. So what do I list here?
If it's a loan and it's not a gift, then I would not list it at all.
Even if it's paid on my behalf, since it's a loan, I don't have to list it?
Right. Yeah, I would treat it just as any loan you would go to a bank or credit union or, one of the easy cash places. Again, you're paying it back with interest. So it's no more a gift than a student loan is.
Okay. But then if there was a cash gift, I put it there.
Yes.
If I had money that was lent to me for my business, I don't have to report that anywhere else on this form?
You will have to report your business, and there will be a place where you may have to report what's owed on it. But that's all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about other year parental income. Not only are you asked about 2020 income, but you are asked to project 2021 income. Right now, that's pretty easy to do because we only have 2 months left in 2021. So you as parents or you as students could look at your parents and say, how much have you earned year to date? And how much do you project you'll earn between November and December? And you need to put as accurate an estimate as you can under income earned from work or other taxable income. Are they going to go back and say, you lied, you underestimated, you overestimated? They're not going to say any of that. But if you suddenly say that your 2021 income is a lot less than 2020, you will probably be asked to explain that at some point with the college. And that's easy enough to do if your estimates are reasonably accurate. In other words, if you made 80,000 last year and you say you're making 20,000 this year, why is that? There may be very reasonable logical explanations, but be prepared to give them. There is also, in this part, the question, do your parents expect a significant income change in 2022 due to a new job, a layoff, retirement benefits? Now we're asking you to project a whole year in advance. But if you know you just lost your $80,000 job, and next year you had to take a 20,000 one, or that's what you anticipate, you should say that here. You should answer yes, and then it will, if you answer yes, it will ask you to estimate or project 2022 income. If you're projecting a loss, but it is not significant, for instance, it's $5,000. I made 80,000 last year. I make 75 in the coming year. If that's the case, that is not, in my mind, a significant decrease because it won't make that much difference. But believe me, if you are losing tens of thousands of dollars due to today's economy and the pandemic, you want to say it here because they will take that into consideration. Questions about that? Okay. We are at the 12 o'clock mark, and this is hard stuff, guys, but we're going to keep moving. Chris. There is a benefits screen that you will encounter after you talk about your parents' other income and benefits. The parent benefits screen looks a whole lot like the FAFSA. If anyone in your family who is dependent on your parents has earned or received any of these benefits in 2020 or 21, you want to mark the box. Then on the next screen, you will be told whether or not you qualify for a fee waiver. By the way, if you receive the child support screen, list any amounts for any child support received or paid. So this is where you both add income you've received and income you've paid out in child support. But all of you at about this point, when you've entered income and benefits information for your parents, will see a screen that either says fee waiver has been approved or it is not. Why does it get approved? Because your family earned under $100,000 according to what you put on the first part of the form. So any family earning less than $100,000, the CSS profile is free. If it tells you that you have to pay a fee, that will come up at the end. Questions about that, guys? Let's see. All right. The next section is rather ridiculous, but easy. Where do your parents live? It's probably where you live, but it wants the parent housing details. This is where the form gets really hard. I've been doing this form since 2015, and I can flat out tell you, no student ever can answer these questions, which is why I asked them in the worksheet. After you enter your parents' home address, which is likely the same as yours because it's asking for your custodial parent here, you are asked, do your parents own or rent? Quite honestly, when I was growing up, I don't know if I knew that. So if you as a student didn't know that, that's okay. But this is where you have to make a decision. Do they rent their home? Do they own their home? Do they live with others? Or do they live in employer-sponsored housing? That sounds good. We all get to live for free with our employer or live in the office, right? All right, next. After you say whether your parents own or rent their home, you are asked for details about that situation. If your parents own their home, you are asked a series of questions that I put on the worksheet that you want to complete exactly as your parents helped you with the worksheet, including how much do they pay for their mortgage every month? What year did they buy the house? What did they buy it for? How much is it worth estimated right now? And I want you to think about current market value. That means how much they would try to sell it for if they were going to sell it today. You do not need an appraisal. You do not need an absolute, but you must put in what your parents would try to sell it for if they were to sell it today. That is followed by the total amount they owe on the home. So I'll give you an example. If I decide my house is worth $300,000 and I owe $100,000 on it, I need to say that because that means that the equity I have in that home is $200,000. What if I owe $100,000 on the home and some of it is in a second mortgage that I took out for some reason? At that point, the last question comes into being. If different than the total amount, enter the amount owed on the primary mortgage for this home. I think in many cases, you're not going to have to enter a different amount because it's the same as the total amount owed on the home. If you're not sure, leave these blank and cover them with your parents. But this is where the form veers off into never, never land. You are asked questions you couldn't possibly know unless you sit down and figure them out or guess. And you want to do the former, not the latter. What if you don't own your home and your parents rent? Then it will simply ask you for what is the monthly rent amount and possibly a little bit of information about utilities or other things. But if you rent your home, you don't have to enter anything about its value or what you owe on it because, of course, that does not concern you. If you live with other relatives and you don't own or rent in your household, you simply needed to state that and it will ask you additional questions. Remember that the way you answer these questions dictates how you will get presented additional screens. So I can't see exactly what it's saying to you and you can't see exactly what it's saying to me, but we're covering all the important parts that lead you to other parts of the form. Questions so far? Everybody's like, no, I'm done with this. I feel you. Let's talk about parent assets for a minute. Remember, you already talked about your house, right? If you own it. And you already talked about your retirement plans, if you have one. Now it's time for you to talk about other assets. Other assets and asset details include the following. Some of you will have one of these. Some of you will have some of these. Some of you will have all of these. Some of you will have none of these. Don't feel badly wherever you are. Just be accurate and honest. Investments other than real estate and retirement plans. That means if you have stocks, bonds that are outside of a retirement plan that you can access at any point, that's the type of investment you include there. And I'm getting to that point. And notice that on investments, if you click on investments, you will see the types of things they're talking about. Do you own assets in the name of your children? We all wish, right? But if you do not, you can put that as a no or a blank. The next type of asset you have is cash on hand. That would be your cash, your savings, and your checking accounts combined. Do not overestimate. Definitely do not underestimate. I'll give you an example. If you have $100,000 in a savings account, you do need to list that. If you have $1,000 because you got paid today and you are going to use that money tomorrow to pay bills, you don't have it. You're only having it for a day. So try to be realistic but honest on the amount of money in the bank. Do you own real estate other than your primary home? That would be my vacation home, my second home, my rental property because I'm a landlord. Anything that I have, a piece of land that is undeveloped, but I am the owner of it, you do need to list that real estate's value. And I'm getting to that point right now. And notice, if you say you have other real estate, it's going to ask, what is it? And I am all of a sudden going to have a real estate property, so I can see what you're all seeing. If I have other real estate property, now it starts to ask me those same darn questions it asked me about my house. It wants to know when I bought it, where it is, how much is it worth, and how much do I owe on it. Okay. I have at least one person on this call who owns a business, so we're going to cover that in a little bit of detail here. And notice that farm and business. If you own or operate a business that is your primary income source, you need to indicate that here. Same with a farm. If you own or operate a business in addition to other work, for instance, you own a business on the side, but you have a full-time job during the day, you need to indicate that here too. Or if you own a farm or part of a farm, you need to list it. Let's assume your business is your primary income source. You are now asked very specific details about this business. First of all, what is its name? Secondly, there is a long page upcoming, not very pretty either. Wants to know what kind of business it is. What do you do there? Who owns it? Does it have more than 100 employees or less? Most of us, I think, if we own a business, it's far fewer than 100 employees. And you will notice that you are asked to provide a current market value of the business, the part you own of it anyway. And you again can estimate that. If you are going to transfer that business, sell it to someone today, what would your asking price be? I know, $70 million, right? Then the current amount you owe on it. This is where the loans that you've taken out for the business actually enter. So what do you owe on it right now? As close as you can be. If you own a business, you likely have a profit and loss or profit and expense statement in which you will find the current amount you owe on the business. You'll find the gross receipts for the business and the total expenses, and be as correct as you can on that too, because that's very important to note that entered into your federal tax return. They want to know what the particulars were. I took in gross receipts of $27,000, but I had expenses of $20,000. Therefore, I only made $7,000 from this business on my tax return. They want to know those specifics. And is there anything you want to tell them about this business? Failing miserably, closing because of COVID. We're having a banner year. Whatever you want to tell them. You probably would rather tell them that stuff that doesn't say you're having a banner year. But if you really want to call attention to some aspect of this business, they give you this little box here where you can tell them everything you want to. Now we are on assets. What questions do you have? You're all quiet because you're all like, I can't do this. Don't feel bad, we're getting there. Okay, Chris, I'm going to go on because then I'm going to work backwards in the final 15. There is a part on the CSS profile that asks you something you will never see on a FAFSA, and that is special parent expenses. There are categories of things that affect our lives greatly that you never see when you look at just a basic income picture. One of those things is if our household has had significant medical or dental expenses not paid by insurance. This may be something you need to go back and calculate. If you're only paying healthcare premiums, deductibles, anything you paid out of pocket, if it exceeds 3% of your income, you want to list it. But for instance, if I made $30,000 and I had $300 in medical expenses for the year that I paid out of my earnings or pocket, that's not in excess of 3%. But what if I made $30,000 and last year one of my family members had COVID and my hospital bill is ginormous and suddenly I owe $7,000 to a provider? That is absolutely in excess of 3% of my income. I want to say it. So I want to check the box and I want to tell them how much. What about if I'm a parent and I had student loan payments? You probably didn't repay anything in 2020 or 21 because there has been a pause on student loan payments. And so if that is true, you did not have a repayment amount. But if you are still making student loan payments, even during a pandemic, and you are a parent, here is one of the only opportunities you will ever have to list what it is that you paid, because they want to take into account what you're paying off for yourself as a parent. And if you had to pay alimony, then you are able to list the amount that you paid here, not child support, alimony to an ex-spouse. So this is the place you get to fit in a couple more things that were expenses to you. But if they're just normal, not in excess of 3% of your income medical expenses, don't worry about them. If, however, student loan payments or alimony that you had to pay, you want to list it because it will work in your favor. That's money you do not have for college. All right, questions? All right, now you're going to get to a household summary. Next, please, Chris. The household summary. List anyone besides you and the two parents that are here, or one parent, who live in your household and receive more than half their support from your parents. This is just like you did on the FAFSA. I would encourage you to match the FAFSA as much as you can, because the surest way to get questions asked is if you say, I have 10 people in my household, but I only put 2 of them on the FAFSA. Why is there that inconsistency? The questions are basically the same. You will be asked at the point where you define these other people. Who are they? What are their ages? And I'm looking at them right now. In my scenario, I have a brother. He is my sibling. He's listed as a dependent under the summary. Anybody else in my household, another sibling, anyone else who is depending on my parents for their support, get listed here. So now I've told everyone that he is my sibling, and based on his date of birth, they're going to want to know some things about him. First of all, they want Ian, my brother, to tell the CSS profile what year in school is he. In this case, is he in college? Is he in grade school? Is he in high school? What year is he in right now? And what year is he going to be in school next year? So simple grade progression or grade level progression. They also want to know, is my brother going to a private school? If he is right now, they are going to ask me how much he's paying in tuition and how much he's getting in scholarship aid for that school. Is he going to be attending it next year because he's in 11th grade right now? If he's going to a public school, those answers are both no. What about if he's going to college? It's going to ask some questions about his tuition. Again, they're trying to give you a break for having to pay elementary, secondary, or post-secondary expenses. So if you've got another child in college, this is where you make the most of that. And I'm going to stop for a moment because I'm filling out part of the form to see what it does for you. So questions about who's in your household, what you have to say about them besides you have to tell everybody everything, right? How y'all doing out there?
Seems like everybody's doing good so far.
Okay.
We're continuing to.
Okay, we're going to go ahead past household summary and detail to the next relevant section, which is the easiest one, everybody. Woo! You can advance the slide, please, Chris. Now it's your turn, everyone. If you are the student, do you have any income or resources? Many of you do not. But if you worked, similar to the FAFSA, you hit a whole series of questions that asks about your income and assets. If you have a tax return, you will refer to it to complete the income information. If you did not file a 1040, but you have W-2s because you only made a little bit of money, put that in there too. And then you are going to be asked some very interesting projections. We're going to talk about those now. Student expected income and benefits. You're going to be asked some things you probably cannot answer today, but we're going to ask you to estimate and to guess and estimate accurately. When you are asked on the next screen after you enter whether you worked or not, what do you expect to have in the coming year? You're going to be asked first for, are you planning to earn any money this summer? You're like, I don't know. You probably do not know. But I would suggest that you put something in this box, whether it's $200, $500, $50,000. Don't do that because I doubt you will enter $50,000 in the summer. You'll earn that much. But put something there because it shows the college that you are going to attempt to learn a little money this summer before you get there. You will also be asked to estimate your earnings during the school year. If you don't plan to work during the school year, say 0. But my recommendation is that many of these colleges are going to offer you a work study position. So you might want to say, unless I'm in the hardest engineering program or pre-med program there is, I'm going to try to work a little bit. Again, don't say you plan to earn $25,000 because the likelihood is you will not as a full-time student. But put a little amount in there anyway, maybe $500, okay? And so notice that you are asked for your expected summer and school earnings. If you don't expect to have any other taxable income, just put zeros there. And then finally, do you expect any untaxed income? You don't know that right now unless you have a steady source of untaxed income, like Social Security that will be coming to you after age 18, that's a 0. So I want to tell you how my expected income and benefits looked. When I filled this out, I said I plan to make $500 this summer, and I plan to earn $1,500 during the school year. I think they're going to like that because it shows ambition, right? Shows a little bit of ambition to contribute a little to my college. But I want you to be honest with yourself and them. If you don't think you can work at all, say so. And when you get to the assets section, do not include a lot of cash savings and checking if you only have a couple $100s, because you're going to spend that likely on dorm supplies before you get there. So only if you're sitting on a good sized checking account, savings, money in a college account, do you want to list those things. A lot of this section is going to be a lot of zeros. We were now going to come to a student resource section. You're like, when does this all end? It seems like it's never ending, everyone. I understand that. But you will be asked for resources that are going to come from your parents. And you're like, how do I know that? They don't even know that. So when it says how much money do you hope to get from your parents, my advice remains the same. Say something. Unless your parents are way below the poverty line and have absolutely nothing to give to you. If you have any resource at all, even if it's a few $100s, list it there as money from your parents. If you are entering anything in box 2 here, scholarships or grants that you've received, do not hope here. Only list the amount if you already have it in your hand or know it's coming. So nothing you've applied for if you haven't received it yet, okay? Be conservative here. In my case, I said my parents have $500 for me, and I have received already a $750 scholarship. That's all I'm listing. Do I expect to have an employer that pays my tuition? Probably not. And do I have a grandma that's going to help me because she's been putting aside money for me? That's where I list it there when relatives other than my parents are going to contribute something toward my college. You are probably asking yourself right now, how precise does this have to be? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know many colleges who are going to delve this heavily into your life, but you do want to send this in as accurately as you can. So don't dismiss these questions. Please be honest about them and be as direct as you can, but do not be afraid of estimates. I hope that message gets through loud and clear to all of you. Okay, Chris, I'll have you go on. Special circumstances, if there's anything special about you or your family's financial situation that you really want to tell them about. Not that I have a Mercedes and I have a big payment on it. They don't want to know that. They want to know non-discretionary changes in your income or your circumstances. You have a chance to reveal it. So yeah, I will go back or forward to the next slide. Okay, guess what? You're near the end. I don't want you to hit submit yet because you have likely some parts of this application that you were not able to complete. There will be an application certification section. There will be a final charge summary that probably will be a 0 for many of you. And at that point, you click submit on this form. And what happens next is that you are given many, many more instructions of what you need to submit to each of the colleges you picked. But you are at the end of the basic submission at the form if you filled out everything you can on it. And now you can say it out loud and proud, show me the money, because that's why you're doing this form, because you want the colleges and universities to get a complete picture from the FAFSA and this application and offer you the maximum amount of aid that they calculate based on how you answered these questions. Now, Chris, I would like you to put my email address in the chat. I am more than happy to stay on for a few extra minutes, but many of you are on a lunch break and have to get back to class, particularly for those of you who are parents. I'm happy to answer any of your remaining questions that you ask aloud. I also want you to know that if you email me, I was totally and completely lost during the entire thing. I was able to get through the demographics section and I was able to fill out some of it, but not all of it. I will talk to you and we will either speak virtually through a Teams meeting like we're doing today, or you can come in person to talk with me during one of my office hours. Those are generally restricted, however, by the library to Wednesdays and Saturdays. Please, however, do reach out. I know this isn't simple. I know you have questions. I know this is the first time we've tried to do this very individualized form in a group setting. So please use us to help complete it. Your deadlines generally are not going to be until November for early decision or early action. If you are going regular decision, you probably have until the end of this calendar year before you have to start sweating the small stuff on getting this thing submitted. But you want to get it out of the way as soon as possible. So celebrate now that you've done at least part of it. Get ready to come in and meet with me or to talk with me by phone or Teams meeting if you need to. We will work with you on this. But I do ask that you work with me on getting at least a little part of it done, and we will send you follow-up info today before you ask for an individualized appointment. We're getting a lot of CSS profiles this year, and we're just trying to get as much as we can get done in advance before we go the individual route. And with that, I thank you all for bearing with this. Do we have remaining questions from any of you? Or have you all given up already? I hope not. Show you the money. This is our contact information. And of course, my email was put there. That is the very easiest way to reach me once I start working with you individually. For those of you who don't know me already and I'm not already working with you individually, please reach out if you need help. Don't be silent. It's better to get this done right the first time, because if you think the FAFSA is a nightmare to correct, this is worse.
Which email can we reach you at?
It's the Diana.Mateer in the chat.
Oh, I don't even see that.
And I can give it to you right now.
Okay,
it's
great.
Diana dot M as in Michael, A T as in Thomas, EER, Mateer.
MATEER. Okay.
At phoenix.gov.
Excellent. So I can email you with specific questions and we'll do it
you
that way?
absolutely could, yes. And if you've got 20 of them, we could do it. at the meeting. And it's okay if you do. I have absolutely no illusions that this is something you can do in an hour
Okay.
in a group setting. But at least you get some of it done, and that's the good part, because you can feel good about what you've gotten done. And because it allows you to skip around so much, guys, you can always, like, it won't let you go forward sometimes if you don't answer the question on the save and continue, but you can always go to a different section. It'll let you do that.
I do like that about this.
Yes, that's one of the best parts. The only good part about this. And additionally, when you get to the submission part, you're going to start getting a million messages from these lovely people, including if you hear the word IDoc, that is an institutional documentation scanning service sponsored by the College Board, where your colleges can let you use that service to get things like tax returns submitted to them. It is a very, very graceless process, but I can help you get through it. And you won't see it until you submit. So I can't really take you there. Oh, yeah, this is thank you for laughing with me, ma'am. I appreciate it very much.
You have to laugh. First you laugh and then you take care of it. That's how I operate.
Oh, well, or first you laugh and then you cry, but no, there's nothing to cry about in financial aid. We can get through this. I know all of you have some marvelous choices of colleges. I'm here to support you in that effort so that the students can go to your dream school. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
She's already miles and miles ahead of where I was when I applied for college back in the dark ages.
Yeah, well, this didn't even exist when I applied for colleges in the real dark ages, but.
Yeah, back then we had to hire somebody to help us apply to schools.
Yeah.
You could get
They
online.
still exist, by the way, only some of us are doing it for free, so we're fighting the good fight in a better way.
Well, thank you for being there for us.
Oh, you're very welcome, and we are here for you. Do not, again, I think we'll close it if there aren't any remaining questions, but I do want you all to communicate if you're stuck anywhere, because again, it's better to do this right the first time than to have to correct it, because you have to correct it by hand. So let that be your warning.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite archaic. But thank you all for bearing with me being a little flip about it. I think if you don't laugh, you will cry. So that's why I try to put some levity into this process. It's hard, but it's not brain surgery. We just like to make it look like that.
It's finite. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, College Info.
Well, have a wonderful day, everyone. Enjoy.